Up next on God's Property Podcast.
Or I'm going to show him I'm thick. I can get the BBL without paying Dr. Miami. Like, what kind of ground is that? It feels really good when you post that picture, the ex, by mistake, because he went scrolling on your page or she went scrolling on your page and clicked a like, and it's like, ooh, they saw it. But after that, what is going to upkeep you building yourself and building a new foundation?
Welcome to God's Property Podcast, where our property value, baby, it always goes up. Hey guys, and welcome back to another God's Property Podcast, where our property value, baby, you already know, it's always going up. Okay, so let's get into this episode. Actually, before we do, if you haven't watched episode 1 and episode 2 of this series called Demolish and Rebuild, go ahead and catch up. What are you doing? Catch up on those videos. The last podcast we did Ground Zero. And we hit some heavy points talking about number 1, rest and digest. Number 2, beware of those bottom feeders, okay? And number 3, we talked about the memorial. So again, if you haven't caught up, see if you can go ahead and do that. And if not, go ahead and stick around. It is really easy to catch on. This episode 3, we are concluding this series, Demolish and Rebuild, and we're talking about the foundation. Ooh, listen, the foundation is so serious because the foundation is for a lot of things. If you don't have a good foundation for a business, if you don't have a good foundation in relationships, if you have a child with somebody and you don't have a good foundation, sometimes there can be unforeseen circumstances. Okay, so that's why the foundation is really, really, really important. And one of the first points that I want to talk about, and remember, get your notebooks because we're going to be taking notes. I'll be looking at my iPad here. The first point that we're going to talk about is, especially when you're trying to build something, right? In the natural, you have to check the ground. You have to check the ground. Remember, we were at ground zero. Okay, so we want to make sure the ground that we're building on is the correct ground. Okay, so what do I mean when I say that? Okay, so we broke down, either somebody said you were skinny and you are not thick and they wanted a thick girl and they dumped you because of that. Or say you lost your job or whatever the case may be, right? And now, instead of building it on the grounds of, okay, well, I want to, get in the gym and look a little bit better and I want to build myself so that I can feel comfortable in my clothes or I can be healthier or live a healthier lifestyle. You're building it on the grounds of, I'm going to show her I got these muscles. I'm going to show her I'm strong, or I'm going to show him I'm thick. I can get the BBL without, paying Dr. Miami. Like that, what kind of ground is that? Right? I know that revenge is really, really sweet, right? It feels really good when you post that picture and, the ex, by mistake, because he went scrolling on your page or she went scrolling on your page and clicked a like, and it's like, ooh, they saw it. But after that, what is going to upkeep you building yourself and building a new foundation? After you get that CEO position, or if you get that promotion, what is going to keep you pushing forward? Keep you pushing forward to new heights. As humans, we evolve. As humans, we want to reach new heights and do new things. What is going to keep you and motivate you pushing forward?
So we have to check the ground that we're building stuff on, because if we're just doing it out of pride or revenge or a faulty foundation, the ground is faulty, not good ground, you're going to get a sinkhole. It's not going to last. Okay. So point 1 is checked what? The ground, right? And then point 2, not only do we have to check the ground that we are building it on, the foundation, but we also have to check the material. So that's point 2. Check the material that you're using. And what do I mean by that? So there's specific material that builders and contractors have to use to be in code, and also different places. Like in Florida, we have hurricanes. We can't have a house that's just gonna blow away with the wind when it comes. There's different things that have to be used, different materials based on where you are. Again, I dibble dabble in property stuff, but don't know that much information, but there are different materials that you use based off of the location, right? Some standardized things, a lot of standardized things, but different materials. But what materials are you using for your foundation? Who are you following on social media? What preacher are you listening to? All those things matter. All those things matter of what you're feeding yourself in order to build your foundation. It goes down to the music. All of those things have an impact on how you have good ground. Say you were like, okay, well, I have good ground. I want to build myself in a healthy way. But then you're listening to somebody who doesn't have the best foundation and doesn't have the best grounds that they're building on. So you're taking what they're doing and taking their materials that they use to build themselves up, and you're trying to put that on a good foundation that you have, right? So if I'm scrolling through Instagram, again, I'm gonna say a BBL because that's what we be doing nowadays, and you're trying to get a certain look, but you're scrolling on BBLs, that's not something that you can attain. That's not the materials that you have. You have your God-given body. Unless you do go and get a BBL, that's your business. Like Auntie would say, Auntie Tabitha, that's your business. But at the same time, you can't look at that and then try to take that material and try to put it on your foundation. The same thing with podcasts. Hello, I'm a podcast. You have to be careful what you listen to. I know a lot of the times, even in the circle with my friends, we always talk about like these podcast guys that are like, oh, they have all these different things. Of course, God rest his soul. Lord Jesus. Sorry, Kevin Hart, but Kevin Samuels, he was a huge podcaster, and there was an uproar of a lot of men in the Black community and some other minority communities, and as well as non-minority men, that had this new perspective on relationships. And so that caused a lot of rift in a lot of dating relationships in the 21st century, because people are trying to get real relationships. They're trying to get relationships that have meaningful, long-term effect, but they're listening to people who are tearing down women or saying that, saying the truth in some senses and some cases, but is also tearing down women and saying that they're not the best. So how do you expect to get a good relationship, and vice versa with women? There's a lot of podcasts out there that talk about men and that they're good for nothing and they don't have nothing and they never met a faithful man, and infidelity what are you listening to? What material are you listening to in order to build back up your foundation? So just to remind us, point 1 was what? It was check your ground. Check your ground. And point 2, it was check your materials. Check the materials that you are building with.
And then point 3, it's funny because this point, it's kind of, as Christians, right? And I'm assuming those who are watching are Christian. We are taught to be good to our neighbors, be helpful to the people that we are in relationship with, whether it be coworkers, marriage, boyfriend, girlfriend, parents. Be good to those people, right? But sometimes when we were at ground zero, and when we broke down and now we're trying to build back up our foundation, we have to remember the people that we tore down with us, that we were falling and we lashed out on them. We cussed them out. We had an attitude with them when it had nothing to do with them. We were super duper cold and mean. We said things that they can't unhear. Things that we can't take back. We have to check on our neighbors as well. We have to check on our neighbors, because a lot of the times when you're in such a low place and such a place where you feel like it's at the bottom, you're at rock bottom, and you're a bottom feeder, check episode 2 for that. And you're a bottom feeder, you create bad relationships and put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. And sometimes you now have to go back to your neighbors in order to build a good foundation. You're going to have to check on your neighbors and say, hey, if I did anything during this season of my life to make you feel a certain way, I'm sorry. If I was distant, if I was cold, I had to do that in my personal life. I remember at one time, my mom and my sister are probably the closest things to me. And we just did that because, my dad passed when I was really, really young, and we had to be really close knit. And when I went away to college, I just was going through so much, and I stopped talking to them. And I was so cold. I was so abrasive. I was harsh. I was mean. Please don't come for me in these comments. And if my sister and my mom watch, which they do faithfully, I'm sorry again. I was so harsh to them. And I had to go back and rebuild that relationship with them and check that foundation, and make sure that it was still there and still stable. And so I would like for all of us to continue to practice that as we move forward, that when we do get to situations in our life where we are broken down and we are tired and we're trying to build back up, now we check on the people that we hurt in the process. Okay? So that is the 3 points for episode 3. That is concluding our series, Demolish and Rebuild. This was a pretty short podcast, but we know that you guys are strong now. I know that you guys are strong now. You were broken down, you were at ground zero, and you're ready to build this foundation. So you're checking off all of these points on your checklist, and you're ready to rebuild, and you're ready for series 2. Let's review those 3 points again. The first point was what? Check your ground. Check your ground. The point 2 was check the material. Check the material. And then point 3 was check your neighbors. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in to another God's Property podcast. I want you to know that I love you with the love of the Lord. I love you with the love that He bestows onto us, and I give it to you. Just know that it's not over until God says that it's over. I'll see you the next time at God's Property podcast. Leave all your comments in the comment section. Talk about the materials that you are trying to use to build rather than the things that you used to use in the past. And also talk about some of the things that you've done. Don't leave me out here hanging, talking about my mom and my sister, how I treated them so bad. Talk about some of the situations where you had to kind of mend those relationships with your neighbors. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye.
This has been another God's Property podcast. Remember, God already paid it all for you.
when he died on the cross.